So welcome to our session with the Asian Supervisor Network. As I was saying before, our goal is to bring visibility of coaching supervision in Asia, to support you, to bring visibility of coaching supervision in your countries. There is a lot of work that needs to be done. Elizabeth, in Japan, I think there are not many supervisors. In India, we have more and more people getting trained as supervisors. So now I think you have a bunch of people there. I learned that there is a conference coming up that you're organizing in India with ICF India with different chapters. And they are going to have a component on supervision. But in New Zealand, I don't think there are many supervisors. Or in Sri Lanka, maybe we have only one so far, initially representing supervisors. So I think there is a lot of work that needs to be done. So we all need to support each other. So this is the goal, that we get to know each other, so we can work together, we can collaborate. Shifu is organizing the first supervision training in China. So we have a few people getting trained, Chinese colleagues in Chinese with translation, which is great. So we all need to support each other in this process. And today we were thinking with Michel to share with you what happened with the EMCC conference. And maybe next year we may have our own supervision conference in Asia, the good time for Asia with people from different countries. And I know that the colleagues in Asia have a lot also to teach to people from all over the world. So we may organize that. And I know initially you are really great at putting, you put the conference together for ICA Coaching Week, with colleagues in Sri Lanka. So I'm sure we can maybe organize something together. So today, this is the idea. Gerardo was also at that conference. Anybody else who was at that conference by chance, the EMCC conference? So our goal is to share first, maybe Michel, you share some of your observations, maybe talk about your presentation. Then I share some of my observations with some of my presentations, and then Gerardo, you may want to add something also, to if you want to at the end. But this can be more like a dialogue.
So my first observation is that during the conference, several sessions were about supervision of team coaching. So team coaching is suddenly a big subject because, and this is due to the fact that Peter Hawkins and David Clutterbuck have trained team coaches by groups of 1,000. So I have a training in France on team coaching for 15 years, but my groups are only 10 or 12. And now suddenly the training was done on a big group of coaches. So of course, as there are a lot of team coaches, these people want to be supervised. So there is a need for team coaching supervision. So during May and June, not only in the EMCC conference, I counted the total of 11 or 12 webinars about team coaching supervision. So and I initially did one, I remember.
I think you did one, I did another one. We also were doing that too.
Yeah. And in 2021, I attended the first training on team coaching supervision organized by David Clutterbuck and Liz Lewis and some people from Hong Kong. And all the trainees of that team coaching supervision training did at some point of time a webinar on what they understand from that, with different opinions. I mean, it's a lot of fun to see that. Because you see, I started to do team coaching probably 20 years ago now. In France, we started very soon. And so I also did supervision very soon. But it was, I would say, well, I was doing supervision, one-to-one supervision, and supervision of team coaches. And well, have not noticed a lot of differences. And then suddenly, 12 webinars with 12 different opinions on team coaching supervision. I mean, it's a real surprise. Okay. So I give a lot of focus to parallel process, and maybe you are interested in what I have discovered about that. Do you know what is parallel process? Are you familiar with that notion of parallel process? Raise your hand if you.
I think here, my understanding that it's everybody here is a supervisor. Sometimes we have guests who are not, but today I think everybody who is here are supervisors.
Yeah, but sometimes, you know, supervisors from some part of the world are not familiar with that notion. But in fact, there is it's similar to transference, but it's also quite different. And there are a lot of different theories about parallel process, and so, in fact, there are replications from a system to another. There are replications. Transference is a replication of an old relationship into the current relationship between the supervisor and the coach. So let's suppose the coach had a special relationship in the past with his father, mother, brother, I don't know, teacher, which is in fact had a big effect on him when he was young. And this relationship replicates in the relationship between him, the coach, or she, and the supervisor. So it's called transference, and probably you all know about that. So there is another replication from the past to the present, which is called resonance. And it's a bit different because it's a replication from the past, but not a relationship that was experienced by the coach, but a relationship that was experienced by the supervisor. So you see, from the past, you have a special relationship of the coach replicates in the present, and it's called transference. And a special relationship of the supervisor in the past replicates in the present, and it's called resonance. I simplify everything. But there are also replication of relationship from the present to the present, and the parallel process is a replication from, let's say, the relationship between the coach and the coachee, and this relationship replicates in the relationship between the supervisor and the coach. So this is the first, this is called parallel process. And it's notions which was discovered by psychoanalysts in year 1950, something like that. 1955, it was. But coaches and therapists who are using the systems theory have identified another replication from present to present, which is a replication from system to system. It's not only the relationship, but it's everything happening in the system. For instance, if there is a weak contract between the coach and the coachee, it might replicate into a weak contract between the coach and the supervisor. Mm-hmm. So it's much more, you see, a weak contract, it's much more than just something happening in the relationship. And there is and so there are several other variations of that replication from present to present. Now, what happens is that during the supervision session, something surprising happens, something unexpected. And that something unexpected might be a tension, might be some kind of emotion or sensation, or maybe the discussion is turning in circles, or maybe there are a lot of different things that might happen, and the reflex should be in that case to consider that it might be a parallel process or something similar. You have to understand that transference and parallel process are things, I mean, it's called constructs. I mean, they are not objective scientific objects. It's like love. You know, we all know what is love because we feel something, and we can talk about what we feel, and we've given the name love because more or less it's the same for everybody. So transference and parallel process, it's exactly the same. No one has ever been able to identify exactly what is parallel process. No one has ever been able to measure the intensity of parallel process or anything like that. You know, it's not really, we are sure that it exists because it's creating sensations, feelings, sometimes effects in our body, but it's a notion which is very soft. Just compare it to love. We are really sure that love exists. And I am very sure that parallel process exists, and I'm very sure that transference exists, because I can talk about that with my colleagues, with you, but in fact, it's not like it has not been a scientific, it has never been a scientific object. You know, it's what we call in psychology a construct. And there are a number of constructs in clinical psychology science. So now it's possible during the supervision session to make the hypothesis that what I've just observed in my body, what I just observed as an emotion, is a parallel process. And now what I am going to do with that. So as it is a it's supposed to be a replication of what happens in the coach-coachee relationship, which replicates in the supervision coach relationship. So we can make a hypothesis about what happens. We can share with the coach what we think about what is the relationship between them, the coach and the coachee. Let's suppose that let's take an example. The coach tells me, I'm not happy today. You should do better. So the coach, in fact, tries to make me feel guilty, and I feel guilty which is not usual because I'm a good professional. I do my job at a high level. So why is that? Why the coach is telling me that I should be better in my job, that I should be a better supervisor, that is not satisfied with what I do? As I feel guilty, and it's not, I mean, I don't feel guilty very often. I'm not a pervert, but I have done 12 years of psychoanalysis, so feeling guilty now I can manage that. So I can make the assumption that the client is trying to make the coach guilty. You see the hypothesis about the replication of something between the coach and the client. And then the coach says, yes, that's true. This is exactly what he is doing. And then as we have confirmed the parallel process I have confirmed the parallel process by sharing my emotions, by sharing what I feel. And the coach has told me that, yes, what is happening in the supervision session is also happening in the coaching session. Then we can try to analyze what's going on exactly. And how can we prevent that? And of course, we can prevent that by changing something in the contract, as you probably know. Something in the contract between the coach and the coachee probably was wrong, and there is space for the client to make the coach guilty, or feel guilty, in fact. The coach is not guilty, he feels guilty. And the coach is replicating that and trying to make me feel guilty also. Have you seen that kind of phenomena? And so when we feel something which is, I mean, which shouldn't, when something happens which shouldn't happen, we can assume that maybe there is a parallel process. And then what we can do is meta-communicate about that. I mean, as a coach, I say, well, you know, I normally I like you, but during 5 minutes, I really hated you. I considered you are a bad guy, and this is very unusual. Or I can say, in other words, I can say to my supervisor, during 5 minutes, my counter transference was very, very negative, which shouldn't happen because normally I like you. What's going on? So I can share that and have a discussion with the supervisor. So is that a counter transference or is that a parallel process? And if it's a parallel process, what does it mean about your relationship with your client? You see that kind of discussion I can have with the supervisor. And it's very rich because sometimes we can identify some things that really the coach is not aware of because usually coaches are not really trained about identify their emotions and sensations. They are not really trained about analyzing that, but we can do that during the supervision session. So I have 2 questions for you. Is what I say clear? I mean, have you already experienced such things in your professional life? And what are you doing with that? I mean, if you can say a few words about that so that we can see if I can go further. Don't be shy.
Michel, yeah, I can relate to that because, you know, sometimes you have coaches who come to supervision who are feeling quite overwhelmed.
Yeah.
By what's going on, particularly, you know, when during the pandemic or constant change, you have coaches coming feeling quite overwhelmed and actually sometimes a little bit unsure how to coach the person because they just feel so overwhelmed. And then when you explore that, and I can see that coming into me then, you know, gosh, I feel overwhelmed now. How do what's my role here? How do I manage that? But when you start exploring it, you see that that feeling of overwhelming is also going on for the client because there's so much change or so many things happening within the organization.
Yes, it's so sometimes the present situation of the coach is such a mess that he replicates that mess in the supervision session, in fact. And so, you know, I mean, during the supervision session, it's supposed to be quiet. We have all the time. So it shouldn't be messy, you know. So when it's messy, is that I can usually assume that it's a replication of the mess of coach's life.
Right.
Now the other, I mean, it's interesting to see that, to go into the details, because a lot of people have documented the emotions and sensations that we supervisors might feel, and which could be a parallel process. So the list is that unexpected emotions, of course, the conversation is blocked. We are suddenly very tired, or I'm bored, or I have a sudden excessive technical implication. I suddenly become very technical in what I do as a supervisor, instead of being attentive to the emotional side of the situation. Or we are in a dead end in the conversation, or suddenly there are contradictions in what the coaches say, or there is a tension that shouldn't be there. In fact, that's the kind of clues for parallel process, but clues that might also be, these also can be clues for transference.
Thank you, Michel. I think it was pretty clear. I think that for training supervisors, and many people here work with me, it's a difficult teaching parallel process, and understanding parallel process is not easy, because it requires what you were just saying. I really enjoyed listening to you, because what you say that coaches, we many times don't have been trained to listen to our bodies, our emotions, and have that higher level of awareness. So I do believe to be effective supervisors, we also need to bring our level of awareness as coaches to the next level, where we start paying attention to things we are not paying attention before. And what you were saying,
there are reflective techniques that I have discovered many years ago. When I was a young coach, sometimes I felt bored and even more than bored. Sometimes I was feeling going asleep.
Mhm.
And so I was not really proud of that. But I said, well, I'm going to discuss that with my supervisor. And the supervisor at that time say, welcome to the club, Michel. You've just discovered transference now, or transference or parallel process. And so what my supervisor said at that time, what you are going to do, Michel, is every time you feel bored or even more than that, you take notes of what is the situation, what are the elements of the situation. So I did that during 3 months, and we had another discussion with the supervisor. And what I discovered is that every time, when I felt really bored, every time my coachee was close to depression or depressed. So I've discovered something very important, is that there was a close relationship between the depression state of my coachee and my boredom. So, and so my supervisor said, so okay, now you have a very good detector of depression. You don't have to go through the list of hypothesis about is he depressed or not. You just, if you feel bored, you can say, well, maybe he's depressed. And so instead of feeling bored, I was suddenly excited. So because in fact, I discovered that my emotion, my sensations are not emotions or sensation. It's information. It's pure information. So next step I discovered was some people I was really how can I say irritated with some people, men or women. And I did the same and looked at with my supervisor, and I discovered that with hysterical personalities, with histrionic, I don't know how you call it. People who suffer from hysteria, they create in me a very special kind of irritation. And so I transformed that into a detector. And so over time now, I try to look at my emotion and sensation in order to see, and because I have done some training with my colleagues. We have a discussion, we look at, you see, it's really an analysis of what I felt, what were my sensations, and try to relate with the situation, either the personality of the coachee or the supervisor, or what's going on in the relationship. So detection of parallel process, it's a lot of training, in fact, but it's useful training because instead of thinking, it's just in milliseconds that you can make an hypothesis about what's really going on.
Thank you, Michel. We have 15 minutes left, so maybe in the last 15 minutes, I can share a little bit of something that I prepared too, and maybe Gerardo, do you want to also have a few minutes or not?
Yeah.
I am learning a lot, and this was very interesting as a plus of what was the conference and what was the training. And well, I was thinking how many depressive clients I had in the last time, but that's a joke.
Let me share a few points, and then Gerardo, you can add something. So what I want to do briefly, Michel, is to show people the program, so you get an idea of what was the conference and what was the program for the conference. We have 3 keynote speakers, and it's very interesting because I believe that we are experiencing post-COVID burnout. So people don't really want to come to conferences. People are tired. They don't want to just sit in front of the computer any longer. I don't blame them. I don't either. Sometimes like we're miss late. It's 8 p.m. at night. I started today early in the morning. I have a long day here. And for you, Gerardo, it's midnight. So we're getting Zoom fatigue. We're getting Zoom fatigue. It's like we need to think twice if we're going to be sitting. So thank you, everybody who's here. You know that I want to give you credit for really, making it happen. But people are not coming to conferences any longer as much. So like for this conference, I think that they say that 500 people sign up, but I never see more than 150. I don't know, Michel, have you seen? You remember? Or Gerardo, you were there too. I never saw more than 150 at the beginning with the keynote. That was the most people that I see.
That's what I noticed.
Yeah, and then in the session, we're very populated with tons of people in each session. We were kind of small group, but it's nice. But the point that I want to make is people are experiencing learning and training fatigue, and going to conferences now. It's you want to think twice. You want to invest time on that. And particularly, there are a lot of free stuff, a lot of free sessions, a lot of free webinars. So people are reconsidering.
Yeah, I also noticed that the proportion of women is higher than in the population of coaches and supervisors. I mean, the normal proportion is 60%, 60 to 65% are women, but there are more women in conferences.
Interesting.
That's, I don't know why. I mean, it's just an observation. I have no interpretation of that, but
so there were 3 keynote speakers. The first one was about humor. That was interesting because of COVID. Had to bring lightness. Everything is so heavy. Everything is like so much going on in the world. That how to bring lightness and how to bring humor to our work. And interestingly, they chose an American. And there were not many Americans in that conference. It was a European conference. Most people were from Europe. But they chose an American, but the American humor is different. I don't know, I have been living 35 years here and still don't get it sometimes. Like, poor my partner, he laughs by himself, many times because I'm not getting it. But how to bring some humor, how to bring some lightness to our work, what I think is a really great question for everyone here is, how do you do that? It's not about laughing about people, but how to bring some humor and some lightness and to make the conversation, to bring the conversation something like that. Now, it's very culturally, we were talking about difference in cultures. It's very cultural. And sometimes some jokes can be very misunderstood or misinterpreted. So how do you really bring lightness and you laugh together, not at somebody or something? So this is what was the session about. It was interesting. The second keynote was about feminine leadership and how we can all learn from that. I was not able to make that one, but I heard it was interesting. Interestingly, not many people showing up for that one. I think there was only 20 people from the 500 people in the conference. We have a small amount of people. What I think is interesting. What are some misperceptions about what that could mean? I assume that many people watched the last one. And the last one was very interesting because it was about the future of coaching. And I did 2 presentations at the conference. One was on team coaching, as Michel was saying before. And the other one was about the future of coaching. And I was very disappointed because the session was about what skills coaches need in the future to be successful. So what would you think will be the answer? Everybody, what do you think if I ask you, what are the coaching skills that coaching needs in the future to be successful? What will you come up with? What would you say? So after 50 minutes of after 50 minutes of a keynote, I asked the presenter because that was not clear for me, what was it? And what do you think he said it was? Key coach competency for a coach to be successful in the future. Anybody? Just open your microphones.
Awareness.
Awareness, okay. That makes sense. I would say that.
Humility.
Humility, interesting.
Systematical.
Systemic thinking, like looking at
systematical. System
thinking, looking at system.
Yes.
Big picture, looking at systems.
Vulnerability.
Vulnerability.
I
Inclusion.
would say,
Inclusion.
I would say digital, but
Digital, interesting. Technology skills.
technology or commercial skills.
Anything else?
Adaptiveness.
Adaptiveness. Oh, that makes completely sense. Yeah, I would say that too. Well, the one that he came up with, what I was a little bit surprised, was emotional intelligence.
Ah!
So I think we need 50 sessions, 50-minute sessions to talk that the coach needs, because we need already emotional intelligence. We will not need it in the future. We need it now.
Yeah.
It's like a foundational skill. But I don't want to be critical, okay? I think that that was one of the main points, but I was a little bit disappointed. I expected more from that session. And then let me show you briefly, and I know I don't want to be longer at the time. I know a couple of you need to go at the top of the hour. And by the way, before you go, I need volunteers to present in the future. I want to invite everyone here, especially the people from Asia. Shifu, Elizabeth, Travan, Jeff. I want to, Shimsho, you presented already, but that was last year, so you can present again this year. I want to invite everybody from Asia to present. So please, any topics, Elizabeth, anything that you feel that you don't have to prepare, anything that you can come and show up and just lead a conversation like Michel did today, let me know and we will come up with I will put them for the rest of the year. So please send me an email and let me know. So related to, let me show you briefly before we go the program. I mean, what I prepared this, Gerardo, any reflections that you want to share about the conference, about your experience going through it?
I want to be brief, but my observer was regarding from Latin America, what was going on with supervision in the rest of the world. I'm always curious on that. And when we share with Damian, with the Latin American people, I make a point regarding what MCC thinks and does, because it's not much known here, and the importance of the evolution of supervision and the evolution of coaching and the evolution of working together to create a better world for everyone. More or less, that was the point. I always learn from other countries, as I've been in events with many of you, and I really enjoy that, and that's my surprise, no? The getting involved with the whole world. That's the best we can do.
And thank you, Gerardo, for being here. And for us, like for me, it was midnight, and I did that. Like Michel, you coming here to these meetings at 4 or 5 in the morning. I stay overnight for 2 nights instead of sleeping. I was in this program, this conference. So we started with a keynote with Andrew Tarvin talking about humor, find your funny. Then we had the first level of session, and there were like 5 different areas. There were general topics, coaching, mentoring, group and team coaching, and supervision. So maybe that's also why, Michel, you find this abundance of topics related to supervision and team coaching, because there are many around team coaching as an area where EMCC now is also investing. EMCC has its own credentialing around this. And what I did in my session, I brought the competency model for team coaching from EMCC. ICF, that has a new competency model for team coaching, and Association for Coaching, AC, that is big in Europe, not as well known in the United States. So I brought these 3 different competency models so people can compare how these 3 different skills and way of looking at team coaching were different and learn from that. So that was my presentation. So here in the area of the topic was harmony, and here we have different presentations around this topic, creating a container for harmony, different issues about diversity. Lily Ciro, that many of you know, she did a presentation on storytelling and the working with indigenous in coaching, the indigenous community of Canada. You can see here in group team coaching again about coaching multicultural teams. So the issue of diversity, inclusion, that also was very present during the conference. In supervision, we have Amaranto talking about silence. We have Claire Becklet, Mike Roy talking about creative reflective practice. We have some of the sponsors with different presentations. We have here a session about exploring non-Western approaches to coaching. Interesting again. Reflection, a new technique, reflective practice in coaching supervision about maturity in coaching. Overcoming gender bias, again, look how, again, issues related to diversity came up. Here the keynote was around feminist leadership. It's an issue on coaching about gamification. Again, here about cross-cultural, about self-reflective experiences. Evolution of coaching. I didn't attend Jonathan Passmore's session. This was really interesting. I hope that I can do that later. And here in my session of foresight for coaching supervisors, so to know the future. And I may do this session for this community in the future. And then the last day, day 3, we have the final keynote speaker about the coaching skill that you need for the future. And that I was telling you. Here are some of the other topics that were presented. Felicia Lowe make an interesting session about supervision, mystery and myth, make us reflect, and it's an interesting exercise. So here you get an idea, and we need to wrap up before we have 2 minutes left. So thank you for coming, everyone. You at least get a sense of what happened during the conference. Michel, anything you want to say before we go?
Yeah, there are some new areas emerging. I'm in France, for instance, but not only. Supervision with horses.
Natalie, yes.
Yeah, that's quite interesting. Supervision and artificial intelligence. Or there is supervision and complexity, how to supervise very, very complex situations. Supervision, of course. Supervision of mentoring. Now there is some attention given on that. Supervision of internal coaches is also attracting a lot of attention. Pro bono supervision. Supervision of agile coaches is also interesting. So all that will be, because it's a collective, all that will be in my new book. So maybe some of the people might like to, especially supervision with horses is fascinating. I've done supervision sessions with horses, and it's very marvelous.
So that's an interesting session for the future to have you talking about that. I know also Natalie in Canada.
Natalie Dubé in Canada, yes. Yeah, in Quebec, yeah.
Yeah, she's doing that work too. We might invite her to talk about that. Maybe you can do that together. So thanks everybody for joining today. Remember, we always meet the last Wednesday morning in Asia of the month. Next month, we will have Ronnie. She's going to be talking about polarities. And it's going to be a very interesting session. Don't miss it. It's going to be great. I am looking forward to that myself. And I will send you the invitation with the link. So you don't need to register. I want to make it easier just for you to get the link, so you can just come and show up and participate. And please, if you can think of any topic you want to present, please let me know. Shifu, I don't know if you feel like you want to do something, think about it. I would love you to present if I've never done that before. And then in the second round, Sunny, it will be great for you to present again. Nice to have you. Your sessions are always amazing. And Linda, you may consider that in the future too. And usually also have done a session a couple of months ago. You can repeat. So we are open here to everybody participating and supporting each other. So if you're interested, for people who are available on Thursday, there is a supervision demo that my colleague Lucy Shenandoah is going to be doing at 8 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. Probably for people in Asia will not be a great time, but for people who are available, come to join us on Thursday at 8 a.m. And the information is in my newsletter, so you all have that, so you can access that if you want to join. Have a good night, good day, good afternoon, wherever you are in the world. Great seeing you. Take care.
Buenas noches, suerte para todos.
Right, bye.
Bye bye.
Bye.